Howdy my totally as always tubular gamers, and we're back with another video, and it's actually a review. It's not a ranking video, it is a review of Tactics Ogre Reborn, the remaster of Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together. Before we get started, I want to give a big shout out to Square Enix. They provided this game to me for the free. They sent me a code and everything, which is pretty awesome of them, and we're going to take a little look at this game here. So for the few who might not know, this game is a remaster of Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together, a PSP game that was a remake of a Super Famicom game of the same name. Over the years, Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together has really been called one of the greatest strategy RPGs of all time, and I guess this was Square Enix really trying to get this game on a modern console since the PSP isn't exactly modern anymore. But you know what? Coming back all these years later, how is this game? Is it as great of a tactics game as it always was? When it comes to me personally in tactics games, I've never been crazy on them, but I do like a couple of them. I like them when they're good, and boy did I like this game actually. While it did take me a bit to get into it, I really actually enjoyed my time with Tactics Ogre Reborn. And I can tell you it was not because of the story. Let's discuss the story for a second. It's really one of those typical all the kingdoms are kind of fighting, victor at the top kind of ordeals, and I'll be real, I just wasn't very interested by it. There's so many different characters and it was kind of hard to keep track of them, and it was just that kind of political story that I've never really been too interested in. I know like a lot of Game of Thrones is something like that too, and I just never really was interested in it. The story was not something that captivated me in this game. Some of the characters seemed fine enough, but it really was whatever for me. At least the game does have you make a lot of morale choices, where you can either do something hella shady and probably somewhat evil, or you can try to take the higher route, and depending on your answer, you'll actually get different scenarios, different battles, and even different characters that'll join you. The characters in this game I just never really got attached to or really thought all that much about, but again, the story really is just a means for the gameplay. When it comes to the gameplay, this is this game's bread and butter. I think the gameplay of this game is actually really fun. Now, like I said, I haven't played a ton of tactics games. I know Final Fantasy Tactics and I know Fire Emblem, and that's about it. And so when I played this game, I was like, I wonder what this is going to be like. And you know, this was actually some of the most fun I've ever had with a tactics game, where you really have all your units, your squad of like 8 to 12 units depending on the battle, and you really just go at it. The objective is to either take out all of the enemy units or take out their commander. Okay, obviously there's a lot more that factors into these battles than just going at it. Obviously your units are incredibly important, their classes, their equipment, and all of that typical RPG stuff like their level. This is a turn-based strategy RPG, so there's also a bunch of factors like the environment, your stats like any other RPG. You'll move your units, you know, across some tiles, and then if you are in range you can attack. There's always a chance you can miss or get parried, and then there's a bunch of little extra nuances here depending on the classes. And these nuances really make these battles a lot more interesting than just you attack, I attack, we hit each other, rock'em sock'em style. No. There's much more class to it than that. For instance, the knights can do pincer maneuvers on enemies, you can have the mages casting spells, you can shoot arrows. There's a bunch of different classes in this game. There's a bunch of unique ones too, more than just basic knight and archer. There's different types of enemies, all with their own weaknesses and strengths. There's undead enemies. Like, there's a lot going on here when it comes to this. Despite being essentially a Super Nintendo game, there's actually a ton of different variables, and it leads to basically every battle playing very different from each other. Even if you restart the same battle, it will not play out the same way. Like I said, the environment plays a huge factor. You know, who has the higher ground, the weather can actually affect things. And then something new to this remake is these cards that drop all over the battlefield. These are buff cards, and they can really affect the battle. There's stuff like instant critical, and there's even some cards that will permanently upgrade your characters. So these add another layer of strategy, and all you gotta do is just move to them and end your turn on them. And all of this leads to some of the most dynamic battles you'll find in any strategy RPG. And then we come to the difficulty. Tactics Ogre is not messing around. This game will kick your ass to the curb and you'll get run over by a truck, a taxi, and a bear will maul you. Like, this game is seriously not messing around. I was just trying to, you know, sit down at the beginning of the game, relax in bed, and play some Tactics Ogre for like an hour or two. No, this game is not that kind of game. This game will destroy you. Especially for the story battles. You absolutely need to bring your A game. You need to bring some really good strategies in, otherwise you will get destroyed. The enemies will just systematically annihilate you, and it happened to me tons of times, way too many times to count, until I finally really got to grips with this game's mechanics. And of course the fancy new rewind system that is actually very helpful, but it's still not going to save you. I mean, you're going to just get destroyed in this game at some point, and so you really just got to accept that fact and learn how to adapt and really find your strategy that works, and you got to really have a great team. And while the game does have a pretty good tutorial, I really found myself just going to GameFAQs to find what other people were doing and working, because whatever I was doing was just not working. But you know what? I had such a fun time with this, like actually having to learn the game, learn its mechanics, and really going after all these type advantages and creating my awesome squad. Like, I really enjoyed it. Despite that, I did have some issues with this game. The first one I think most people have had an issue with, and that's the level cap. Depending on where you are in the story, your level can only go so high, and I don't really like that. I'd much rather just grind to make some of these battles easier, but that's not an option here. Additionally, while I think the menus are pretty clean and simple to understand, something that wasn't really too clear to understand was who exactly is on your team in these battles. Like, even after playing with the same teammates for ages, I was still accidentally attacking them thinking they're the enemy, and I just wish they made it a bit clearer. Maybe I just suck, or it's because I'm colorblind, but I don't know. I wish they made it a little clear who exactly you're up against. And also, there's so many different classes that, like, it's so easy to get them confused with each other, especially when they all look the same. I don't know, call that a skill issue, or I'm really bad at reading tactics games, but maybe it could have been a bit clearer as to what class is what and who exactly is your ally in some of these battles. Speaking of looks, we could talk about the game's graphics. It looks pretty good. I mean, it's a PSP game, really just kind of upscaled and remastered. I'm not huge on the sprites, they look whatever. They look a bit smoothed out, and I've never been a big fan of the smooth look. I kind of wish they just made it look like Octopath Traveler, but I digress. The environments look pretty nice. The game now has voice acting, which is pretty great. And then the music, wow, I did not expect the music to slap so hard in this game, but the music is actually really good. Like, it is really good music in this game. I was like, wow, damn. But overall, I would say the presentation is still pretty good, and the new voice acting is actually pretty solid. The game does have a speed up feature, and I mean, it's not as fast as I would like it. Some of these battles really do take a long time, especially towards like the middling parts of the game to the end, but you know, it was still pretty good. This is not some kind of game you can just sit down and play for like an hour. This really is one of those games where you have to play a lot of it. And you will find yourself looking at that battle screen way longer than you probably expected. This game took me well over 30 or 40 hours to beat, and I didn't even do like any of the side stuff either, and I struggled throughout the whole game. So I'm sure if you want to do all the side stuff, get all the endings, try all the options, you're looking at well over 100 hours, and that's a lot. Honestly, playing this makes me want to go try the other Ogre Battle games. I remember there was one on Nintendo 64 I really wanted to try. I'm gonna go try that one. But in the end, I'm going to give this game a big thumbs up and a recommendation if you like strategy games, tactics games, or really RPGs. I totally think it's worth playing. Unless you played the PSP version, then there's really no reason to play this. But I just want to give another shout out to Square Enix. Thank you for providing me with the game. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go check out all the other ones now. And with that, I'm going to say see everyone later. Bye-bye.